Hi, Anna. Welcome to What's Your Next podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Laura. It's great to be here.
So happy to have you here. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am Australian, as you may be able to hear. I live outside Melbourne. My debut came out in 2013, so 13 years ago now. It
Oh my
was a book
gosh.
called Untamed. It's a real deep cut. Some of your listeners may have read it. And I promise I have been working very hard ever since then to produce the next book, which now this year, thank goodness, is here. So it's a sapphic Regency romance called The Duke, in which there is a hot female duke who falls in love with a French courtesan who's extremely clever and takes care of all the duke's enemies and wins her heart.
I love the premise of this book because it tears the Regency trope that we come to fun love upside down, but at the same time, it drops you up in a world that's there's female dukes, like it's normal, and queerness is just normal, it's acceptable. There's no question about it. And I think it brings that place of those rules are out of the door, and it gives you this place for exploration of relationships and enemies and blackmail and political intrigue, and it allows you to have a playground with it where you
Yeah,
don't have
definitely.
the historical when you think historical accurate in the sense of it and queer people existed in history and it's not brand new. Maybe there were no female dukes and that's patriarchy, but I love this.
Yeah, I did originally have some sort of extra world building around the female nobility, and I actually found the closer it came to a really classic romance in every other respect, except for this one difference of the female nobility, the more that one
Yeah.
difference really popped. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that was really interesting to me. It was like actually making the world much more conformist, I guess, really made that one aspect just so great. So, yeah, it's an interesting way to explore the historical romance because everything's the same but completely different because you're shining this one different light on it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to take on. You got the Duke of Howard, who is a softie, shares and portrays herself as someone who's strong and has a persona that's very different from her inside. And then we got Celine is gonna blackmail her. Like she's the Duke of Howard left her behind, and she's gonna go back and take her power with it. And then you set this time in a post-revolution time in this Regency era where there's like political world that's happening. What was the process of you to build the world and build this relationship in a way that feels authentic for your voice at the same time allows the reader to explore these themes that are similar but they're different, they're fresh in many ways.
The concept of the series really came from the idea of the romance hero archetype and just thinking about the qualities that create the romance hero, that quality that he has when you read a real classic historical, like what is it about him that's so absorbing, that's so, he becomes such an object of desire. And I thought there are these real qualities that the hero has, which are he has a tragic past, he's politically powerful, he's sexually aggressive, he's physically imposing. Actually, if you think about it, none of those qualities are any more like a real life man than they are like a real life woman. Like they're not actually gendered qualities except for the way that we perceive them. So I just was really interested in can I make a female character have that quality, that sort of conceptual hotness? Like all characters in romance are physically hot, but can I make her conceptually hot in that specific way? Yeah, so the next book that I'm working on in the series is The Rake. So I'm really taking these hero archetypes and embodying them in women, which is just really fun. So that was kind of the core of where the character and the relationship came from. And then, yeah, as I said, it just became very clear that she needed to have such a classic historical romance. So Duke
Yeah.
Prostitute is very classic. And I can't remember why Celine came from France, but I really liked her being backed into a corner and specifically having been left in terrible circumstances by Kate, the Duke of Howard. So
Yeah.
Eve of Revolution just felt correct. And I think her coming from a society that did not have the female nobles kind of allowed us a bit of an outsider's view into this new regency where she hasn't experienced this sort of female power before. And she's had to develop a very different kind of female power, which I would say is a much more classic romance heroine form of power. Very clever, sort of subverting her circumstances to make what she can of them. So together they form an extreme power couple.
And I love the fact that you touch upon typical historical romance tropes, the marriage mark, the finding of husband, the person who's guiding you through the marriage mark, and then realizing they have feelings for that person and then developing that. Talk to about your experience reading historical romance. When did it start? Were you were like growing up in high grandma's red bodices, or was something later on in your adulthood that you just discover historical romance? Because many people who read this genre have a visceral, there's a place where you started. Like there's a particular book, whether it is 80s and 90s, 70s, rip bodices, it might be like recent in 2000s, but there's something, there's a history behind it for this genre.
Yeah,
Talk
for
to about your journey.
sure. I'm quite sad I'm not one of those people who at 12 years old was like reading the classics. Yeah, where my romance reading started was in Australia. We had this magazine called Dolly, which was like the teen girl magazine. And they started producing these very short contemporary romances called Dolly fiction. I still have a whole collection of them. I love them. So that was really where my romance reading began. But it wasn't till my early 20s that I discovered historical romance. And I was studying at Melbourne Uni, and the student union library, the Round and White Library, had an amazing historical romance collection, like a full wall. So I just started going in there and borrowing like 10 a day kind of thing. And at that point, it was really like pretty classic, like Julia Quinn, Lisa Kleypas, yeah, a bunch of other people who were writing more at that time. Their names escape me right this second. Yeah, so for a long time, I was really just reading historical romance. Yeah, and then, I guess as you read a certain amount of a genre, you start to refine what's really working for you. And yeah, there are a couple of writers who, yeah, I really love, to probably inspired and taught me a lot about writing in the genre.
Yeah. So we're in 2026. It's 6 years post Bridgerton, where we did have resurgence of historical romance, but the historical romance with, I don't know, I'm in Australia, but in the US, mass market paperbacks, which is what it used to be, the format the historical romance used to come, is no longer in print. Is actually now we're transitioning to a different type of. It's a genre that's in transition. People are now discovering it again, and it's interesting. But what is it like for you to write a 2026 historical romance? Because I think it's an interesting crossroads, because the genre, we're exploring different themes that are outside of the norm of the genre. There might be themes that we see in contemporary romances, but we're also in this place of like playing around with what was tradition to what is actually the sensitivities of the post 2020 world, where things that happened in the 80s and 90s were not acceptable now, and we got to rewrite history. So talk to us about what it's like writing for you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is a really fascinating genre to be writing, actually. And I do think a lot about, as you say, a big reason that historical romance took a bit of a blow was to do with just the format, like not having mass market anymore. But I think it is also a bit of a time of reckoning for the subgenre. Historical periods have very real implications of empire and power and colonization, I and it's been this sort of fantasy playground for so long, and I do feel like now we're really having to reckon with, I guess, like certain realities of the time, but also you don't want to kill the fantasy of it. It's very strange. And I think that's why for me this was the interesting way to write a historical, was like firmly playing with the genre itself, and like how can I make that really interesting to me. And I think you see that with writers like Emma Alban, who's really writing in this kind of contemporary fanficky way, almost like just the voice, that really light, fun voice. So it's kind of bringing this really modern vibe to a historical, like just people kind of engaging with the fantasy of it in different ways. And then I think you have some writers who really do the historical period incredibly well, like KJ Charles and Mary Ballard still. And I think for them, it really is deeply a historical novel. Whereas for me, it's playing with the fantasy, like the shared fantasy of Regency England. There is a weird kind of cosplaying about it. So it's, yeah, I haven't fully reckoned it out. But I guess that's what I'm doing by writing these books, sort of, yeah, trying to think through some of what it means.
Yeah, I think once shift in publishing, like it's so, as simple as how the book is published, can reckon like a genre because it's not just the historical genre. The cozy mystery genre is having the same reckoning in many ways, and things are shifting. And at the same time, new voices like yourself are emerging, coming to a place where okay, let's get the modern sensibilities that you think or you want to see the world, and playing with the historical setting and playing with the idea. It's the same idea how we see retellings of Pride and Prejudice in many iterations in many ways. There's also a sense of what it will be like writing historical and historical accurate. Well, guess what? People did not bathe or didn't have indoor plumbing or indoor plumbing that you were not. So they're probably smelly people. So how historical accurate do you want to hear that fantasy? You know?
Yeah, absolutely. It is fascinating. And I feel so incredibly lucky to have landed with the publishers and editor that I did, that they're creating this extremely beautiful object of the book. It's going to have these painted edges and it's got an illustration. And yeah, I think they're really asking the question as well, what can we make a historical romance do? Like, how will this land? And yeah, so it's pretty exciting. We'll see.
So let's check some book recommendations. What type of books do you tend to read?
So I read, I've sort of fallen down the KU rabbit hole. So I read
Yeah,
a lot of
very
queer
much. I have.
romance.
I first of all, we're in a heated rivalry. I don't know if you got it in Australia, but we're in a heated rivalry with psychosis. It is happening, and then KU has brought a great place for queer representation and queer romances in all types of form, in all types of way. We got the Omegaverse, right? Choose. We got just the rivals to lovers, iterations. We got sports, we got paranormal, we got contemporary, we got angsty, we got not angsty, we
Oh,
got
it's
joy.
amazing. Yeah, I find KU sort of unrecommendable in a way because it's like you're in such a personal relationship with your id. You're just like finding the thing that really sparks your brain and weird stuff that you're like, why am I feeling a thing? I don't know, but this is amazing. So I almost find the books I love on KU, I'm like, I don't know if I can even recommend this to anyone because they might just be like, what is this? I don't see what you're seeing. But it
I
is
think
very fun.
what self-publishing, independent authors publishing, it offers an opportunity for readers to find their match. And I think in some ways that's why it was so revolutionary in 2020, the book talk world, where people were finding reading. It was like you're able to match that itch, that specific niche. You go down that specific niche. Like I'm talked to authors who was like, I have an author who was trying to do shorts and do like those steamy 20,000 words, like very packed sex scenes and stuff, and we're trying to come up with book ideas. I was like, park rangers, isn't that would be great? Just be successful in writing park ranger shorts of mountain men. There's very
Amazing.
specific alien references and monsters and specific. And I think it's like allows authors to have the flexibility of not having a publisher saying, how is it going to make money? And
Mm.
then testing out the idea and then seeing, hey, we can readers are actually thriving in this market.
Yeah,
And
I'm a very happy reader of all the
yes.
various books. I don't read a lot of historical romance at the moment, which I think is quite normal for a lot of writers. Like you tend to sort of read elsewhere while you're writing a certain thing. But I did want to recommend some older historicals because I feel like if I may categorize myself, which I feel bad doing, but I want to, I would say I'm of the Judith Ivory school of historical romance. So Judith Ivory is just one of the best writers I have ever read in any genre, full stop. Phenomenal. But I would particularly recommend her book Black Silk, which is about the widow of a much older man who has to then deal with that man's heir, and they fall in love. But it's really like Judith Ivory's books her characters are so psychologically interesting. And in this book in particular, she was asking herself the question, why write romance? And so it just, oh, it's so good. But she does not do the genre conventions. Like her hero is sleeping with his mistress on page till about 80% through the book. But my God, when they finally get together on the stairs because they can't wait to get to the bedroom, it's just so good. So two writers who were very inspired by her, Meredith Duran and Sherry Thomas, and they were my absolute favorite historical writers. So from Meredith Duran, I would say if you're going to read one of her books, Fool Me Twice is a perfect Beauty and the Beast. Not retelling, but like that vibe of the duplicitous woman who goes into the house of a mad duke and sort of brings him out of his madness. Just really great. And from Sherry Thomas, I mean, I've read all her books a million times, but this would be my most reread book, I think, I always forget the titles of this series. Tempting the Bride. That's the one.
Yeah.
And so it's an amnesia story where these two people just met at exactly the wrong time. She's slightly older than him. He was like a snotty tween who saw her and got a boner and was like, oh my God, I love you. And then tried to get her attention in all the worst possible ways. So she's just, you're a pest. But then, so that carries through to their adulthood, even as he becomes this like beautiful, rakish man. And anyway, they end up having to get married, but then she gets amnesia and then they fall in love for real and he just gets to be his absolute beautiful self with her. And there are all these layers of hiding behind pseudonyms and storytelling, like just these different iterations of the ways they're telling each other they love each other. It's amazing. So many feelings. And he's just one of the most beautiful romance heroes, like just absolutely gorgeous. So highly recommend that. And then speaking of heated rivalry, which yes, we did get, it was like Canada, US and Australia get heated rivalry in November, which was great.
It was a great Christmas gift. We got
It
Boxing
was,
Day, the finale in the
oh,
cottage. And
it
so
was
it
so
is
good.
really,
I literally spent all day Boxing Day just lying in bed watching all the episodes so that I could then get the final episode. So my biggest recommendation of gay hockey romance is Ari Barron's Penalty Box series. Just phenomenal. So, so good. In particular, the first book, Game Misconduct, which is, there's like a younger sort of bratty player, Mike, who really goes through an arc of coming of age. He's, I'm feeling a feeling. What is this feeling? Having to learn what feelings are and how to be responsible for yourself. And so he's an enforcer. And then there's a much older enforcer, Danny, who's sort of at the end of his career and he's really facing the midlife question of what's next. So I was fascinated by the way they're each on a very different story arc. I don't think I've seen an age gap done in quite that way, but it's a great romance. And in particular, the audiobook is just phenomenal. I don't know if you've listened to any Cooper North, but he has like a dedicated pleasure center in my brain. He's so good. So yeah, highly recommend the audiobook for Game Misconduct.
oh my gosh, I'm adding that to my TBR. That's going to be like immediate one just to itch that hater rivalry itch. But I have to say, I love Sherry Thomas. I love her Lady Sherlock series a lot. But I love her historical romance. And I got to talk to her at an interview, and I was like, can you just write more historical romance? I love Lady Sherlock, but I want more historical romance because you're itch that, like, you fit that niche so well. Her books are just so beautifully written, and there's things, there's emotions, there's romance, there's something to be said. So,
Oh,
for
yeah, I mean, she must
yeah,
get that so much. People being like, please write another one. I feel the
I
same, but
know,
yeah, I can
I
see
know,
how as an author you would sort of need something new, but maybe one day she'll
yeah,
just drop one on us.
yeah. I've transitioned over to mysteries. Mainly, I'm couple with historical and like romance, but no, but I would like to just get back to that historical romance. I appreciate historical mysteries, but just a little bit like kissing and like just is.
Her
uh,
heroes, like, I can't figure out how she does it, but her heroes are
yeah.
so beautiful. They're just these like amazing people.
And it tells me if I know why.
So I have a website, annacowan.com, and you can easily find there how to subscribe to my newsletter. And that's it. That's where I am. Yeah. So I don't send out a ton of newsletters, but I just let people know when things are coming up, when there are discounted pre-orders for my book, that kind of thing.
So, thank you, Anna, for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Laura. It's been great.
Thanks for listening to the What to Read Next. For more book lists, cozy reads, and library tips, visit the whattoreadnextblog.com. Your next great read might be waiting there.